She was known among her people as a warrior unlike any other. From a very young age, she had shown courage and strength that surpassed even the older members of her tribe. Every morning before the sun rose, she would wake and run through the dusty plains surrounding their village. She practiced her skills with bows, spears, and every tool a warrior might need. Her movements were swift and precise, but there was also a grace in the way she moved, like a bird soaring just above the earth. The elders often watched her silently, impressed by her determination and focus, and sometimes shaking their heads in disbelief. "She will be a great protector one day," they whispered to each other. Her tribe, a proud Apache community, relied on each other for survival. Every person had a role, and she had chosen hers early, to defend, to protect, and to carry the strength of her ancestors into every challenge that came their way. She was proud of her heritage, proud of the stories that had been passed down to her about fierce warriors and fearless leaders, and she longed to live up to their legacy. Even among the boys who trained as warriors, she was respected and, in many ways, feared. Not out of anger or malice, but because they knew she was relentless. She never gave up, never hesitated, and she had a heart as brave as it was kind. Her mornings were never idle. After the sun peaked over the horizon, she would run to the nearby river, her bare feet brushing against the cool, damp soil. She would practice her aim, throwing spears into the water with perfect precision, imagining herself protecting her village from any danger that might come. Sometimes she would sit by the river, letting the wind brush through her hair, and think about the generations of warriors who had come before her. She imagined their voices guiding her, telling her to be strong, to be fearless, and to never let anyone see her weakness. The tribe had faced many challenges over the years. Harsh winters, scarce food, and long, dry summers had tested their endurance time and time again. But they were a strong people, and she had inherited that strength in every bone of her body. She learned to hunt when she was barely a teenager, moving quietly through the forest, understanding the rhythm of nature, listening to every sound that the earth made. Her senses were sharp. She could hear a twig snap from far away, see movement in the tall grass, and sense danger long before it arrived. Her father, a respected warrior in the tribe, often walked beside her during these early mornings. He would teach her stories of the past, of battles fought and victories won. "Strength is not only in the body," he would say, "but in the heart and mind as well." She listened carefully, absorbing every word, knowing that one day she would need not only her skill, but also her wisdom to guide her through life. He also taught her about honor, about respecting the land, and about protecting her people even when it was hard. These lessons shaped her, and she carried them like armor in her heart. Despite her strength and skills, she was not reckless. She understood the dangers of the world, and she respected them. She never acted without thought, and she never let pride blind her. When she trained with purpose. Every movement, every step, every breath was deliberate. The younger children of the tribe would watch her in awe, trying to mimic her movements, hoping to learn even a fraction of her bravery. She sometimes smiled at them, giving small tips or encouragement, but she knew that courage could not be taught in words alone. It had to be earned. Life in the village was not always about training and survival. There were moments of laughter and joy, moments when the women of the tribe would sing and the children would dance around the fire. She loved those times too. They reminded her that life was not only about challenges and battles, but also about connection, family, and love. She would sometimes join the dances, moving gracefully even with her warrior's posture, blending strength with elegance. The elders admired her not just for her fighting skills, but for her ability to balance strength with compassion. Her friendship with other young warriors was important too. She had a few close companions who trained with her every day. They pushed each other to do better, encouraged each other when someone fell behind, and celebrated every small victory together. In those moments, she felt the deep bond that tied the tribe together. She knew that no matter what happened, they would watch each other's backs, and she would do the same for them. This sense of loyalty and trust was part of what made her strong, and part of what made the tribe more than just a group of people. They were a family. But strength and skill alone were not enough to prepare her for what was coming. She had always known that life could be unpredictable, that danger could strike when least expected. Still, she felt ready. She trusted in her abilities, in her training, and in the lessons passed down from her ancestors. Each day, as she watched the sunrise and listened to the wind rustling through the trees, she felt a sense of purpose. She was meant to protect her people, to face challenges head-on, and to prove that courage was not limited by age, gender, or circumstance. Her reputation began to grow beyond the village as well. Nearby tribes heard of the young Apache warrior who could track, hunt, and fight with unmatched skill. Some whispered about her bravery in the forests and plains, how she could outsmart older warriors and survive situations that would have defeated many. She did not seek fame or recognition. Her actions were guided by duty and honor. But the stories spread, and soon even those who had never met her knew her name, spoken with respect and admiration. And yet, even with all her skill, she remained humble. She knew that life was fragile, that even the strongest warriors could face setbacks or misfortune. She respected every living being, understood the importance of balance, and never underestimated her opponents, whether human or nature itself. Her strength came not only from her body but from her wisdom and respect for the world around her. As the seasons changed, she continued to train and grow stronger. She became a symbol of hope for the young children, a figure of courage for the adults, and a reminder to the elders of the enduring spirit of their people. Every day brought new challenges and new lessons, and she faced them all with determination. Her path as a warrior was just beginning, but she was already leaving a mark on her tribe and on the land she loved so deeply. Little did she know that her greatest test was yet to come, a challenge that would push her beyond her physical limits, test her courage in ways she had never imagined, and force her to confront not only the dangers of the world, but also the harshness of betrayal. Yet even as she trained, laughed, and lived among her people, there was a quiet strength in her heart, a belief that she could face anything and survive. That belief would soon be the key to her endurance and the source of her legend. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the plains with shades of gold and orange. It was a day like many others, but deep down, she felt a tension she could not ignore. The wind carried whispers through the trees and across the fields, whispers that spoke of change, of challenge, and of trials yet to come. The Apache warrior woman tightened the straps on her gear and checked her weapons, just as she had done every morning. Her senses were sharp, alert to every sound, every movement, every subtle change in the world around her. Today, she knew, she would face something she had never faced before. The news had come the night before. A neighboring group seeking to expand their territory had moved closer to the tribe's land. Their intentions were unclear, but her instincts told her that this was more than a simple misunderstanding. Her people, the elders, and even the younger warriors were on high alert. Everyone was preparing for the possibility of conflict, and she could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She was not just a warrior, she was a protector, and the safety of her family and tribe rested in part on her courage and skill. The morning was filled with the sounds of preparation. Men sharpened weapons, women prepared food and supplies, and children were kept away from the edges of the village. The air was tense, each person moving with purpose, but beneath the surface there was fear. She felt it too, but she pushed it aside, focusing on what she could control: her training, her awareness, and her readiness to act. She walked among the warriors, offering words of encouragement, reminding them of their strength and steadying their nerves with her calm presence. Even in the face of uncertainty, she carried herself with confidence and determination. When the first signs of trouble appeared, she was ready. A scout returned with news that the opposing group was approaching faster than expected. The plains, once quiet and peaceful, began to echo with the distant sounds of movement. Her heart pounded not with fear, but with a heightened sense of alertness. She took her position alongside the other warriors, her mind focused and clear. Every muscle in her body was tense, ready to act. She knew that the coming hours would test not only her strength, but also her courage and resolve. The encounter began quietly, with small skirmishes and cautious movements. At first, it seemed manageable. The opposing group was organized but not overwhelming. She moved swiftly, her training guiding her actions. She dodged, countered, and protected those who were more vulnerable. Her senses were finely tuned. She could sense danger before it arrived, reacting with speed and precision. For a moment, it felt like any other challenge she had faced, one she could overcome with skill and courage. But then everything changed. A sudden charge, faster and more forceful than she had anticipated, caught her off guard. She tried to react, tried to move with her usual agility, but a misstep, combined with the sheer force of the moment, led to a disaster that would alter her life forever. She felt an immense pain, sharp and consuming as the world seemed to tilt around her. She had lost her balance, and the injuries she sustained were severe. Her legs, which had carried her through countless trials through forests, plains, and rivers, were now shattered. The pain was overwhelming, and for the first time, fear crept into her heart, not fear of the enemy, but fear of what her future would hold. The battlefield fell silent around her as those nearby realized the extent of her injuries. She could see the shock in their eyes, the disbelief, and most painfully the hesitation. The elders and the warriors she had grown up with, the very people she had trusted and fought alongside, looked at her with uncertainty. She wanted to speak, to call out for help, but the pain made it difficult to move, difficult even to breathe. Her mind raced, trying to hold on to the training, the lessons, and the courage that had carried her this far. She refused to give in, even as the reality of her situation pressed down on her. Hours passed and the battle continued around her, but she was unable to move. Her strength, though formidable, was not enough to overcome the injuries she had suffered. She watched as her tribe made a decision she could not understand, a decision that broke her heart. They left her behind. The very people she had fought to protect, the people who had celebrated her victories and admired her courage, abandoned her in the field. She was alone, lying on the ground in pain and shock, unable to comprehend the betrayal. The wind carried their voices, their shouts fading into the distance, leaving her in silence. Alone on the battlefield, she faced a new challenge: survival. She had been trained to face enemies, to fight with skill and courage, but nothing had prepared her for this, being left behind, injured, and abandoned. The sun moved across the sky, and with it, her thoughts became more focused. She knew that despair could be her enemy just as much as any opponent. She refused to let fear take control. Slowly, painfully, she began to move, dragging herself along the ground, determined to survive. Each inch was agony, but she refused to give up. Her spirit, her courage, and her willpower were stronger than the pain. Night fell, and with it came new dangers. The sounds of the wilderness were both a comfort and a threat. She could hear the rustling of animals, the distant howl of wolves, and the whispers of the wind through the trees. Every noise made her heart race, but she also felt a strange sense of connection to the land around her. She had grown up with these plains, had trained and lived in them, and now in her darkest moment they seemed to guide her. She learned to listen, to move with caution, and to use every skill she had developed as a warrior to survive. As the days passed, she faced countless struggles. Finding food and water was difficult, and she had to rely on every ounce of her training and knowledge of the land. She crafted tools from what she could find, used her hands and ingenuity to make shelters, and kept herself alive despite the severe limitations imposed by her injuries. Her body was weakened, her legs no longer functional, but her mind remained sharp. She adapted, learned, and grew more determined with each passing day. During these moments, memories of her past life came vividly to her. She remembered the laughter of children, the guidance of her father, and the proud faces of her people. She thought about her training, her victories, and the countless ways she had proven her courage. Those memories became her strength. They reminded her who she was, who she had always been, and who she still could be. Her identity as a warrior was not defined solely by her body or her ability to fight. It was defined by her heart, her courage, and her will to survive. Even as she struggled, hope remained. She refused to believe that this was the end of her story. The thought of giving up never crossed her mind. She reminded herself that she was strong, resourceful, and brave. She had survived challenges before, and she could survive this one too. Each day she grew more skilled at moving despite her injuries, more patient in waiting for opportunities, and more determined to find a way back to safety. And then, on the horizon, a figure appeared. At first she could not believe it. She had seen travelers before, but none had come close, and certainly none had shown interest in the abandoned warrior left on the plains. The figure approached cautiously, and as he came closer, she realized he was not a threat. This was a man who carried kindness in his eyes, someone who seemed to understand the hardship she had endured. It was the first sign of hope she had felt in days, and it rekindled the courage burning deep within her. Though she did not know it yet, this encounter would change her life. It would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one where compassion, determination, and trust would help her reclaim not just her life, but her spirit. The world she had known, the battlefield, the tribe, the endless plains was still there, But she was no longer alone. Even after being left behind, even after suffering unimaginable pain, her story was far from over. She was a warrior, and warriors endure. Alone in the vast wilderness, the Apache warrior woman faced a reality far harsher than any battle she had known. The pain in her legs was constant, a burning reminder of her injuries, and yet she refused to let it control her. Each breath she drew was an act of determination, each small movement a testament to her will to survive. The plains stretched endlessly around her, empty and quiet except for the whisper of the wind and the distant cries of birds. The world felt enormous and unforgiving, but she knew that giving up was never an option. The first challenge was simple yet vital: survival. She had to find water, for her body was weak and dehydrated, and without it, even the strongest spirit would falter. Slowly, painfully, she dragged herself toward a distant stream she remembered from her childhood. Her hands scraped against the rough soil, her arms and torso bearing the weight of her body, while her legs, useless now, lay behind her. When she finally reached the water, she drank deeply, feeling a moment of relief wash over her. The taste of cool, fresh water reminded her that even in hardship, small comforts could sustain hope. Food was another struggle. She could not hunt as she had once done, nor could she chase after prey. Instead, she had to rely on what the land offered, using her knowledge of plants, roots, and berries. She remembered her father's lessons about which plants were safe to eat, which ones could heal minor wounds, and which ones could provide the energy her body needed to endure long days. Using stones and makeshift tools, she managed to gather a small amount of food each day. It was not much, but it was enough to keep her alive, and every meal was a victory. The nights were the hardest. Darkness brought fear in many forms. She listened carefully to the sounds around her, the rustle of leaves, the calls of nocturnal animals, and the distant howl of wolves. Every sound could be a threat, yet she found ways to protect herself. She built small shelters from branches and leaves, using her hands and ingenuity to create a safe space. Though fragile and temporary, these shelters offered a sense of security, a place where she could rest without feeling completely exposed. During these nights, she also reflected on her life, her tribe, and the betrayal she had endured. The pain of abandonment was as real as the pain in her body, yet she refused to let bitterness control her. As the days passed, she discovered that survival was not just about food, water, and shelter. It was about endurance, patience, and adaptability. She learned to move slowly but deliberately, conserving energy while still exploring her surroundings. She discovered small advantages in the landscape: a hidden path that offered easier travel, a rock formation that blocked the wind, or a cluster of plants that provided both shade and nourishment. Her mind, sharpened by years of training and experience, became her greatest weapon. Even without her legs, she relied on her intelligence, her instincts, and her resourcefulness to endure. Loneliness was another formidable challenge. She missed the laughter of children, the guidance of elders, and the camaraderie of fellow warriors. Memories of her past life haunted her, but they also inspired her. She recalled the strength she had seen in her father, the encouragement she had received from her mentors, and the courage that had always burned within her. These memories became her motivation, a reminder that she was more than her injuries and more than the circumstances that had left her stranded. She was a survivor, and survivors find a way to endure. She also faced moments of doubt and fear. Pain and exhaustion sometimes threatened to overwhelm her spirit, and she questioned whether she would ever see another friendly face again. The nights were long, and the wind carried eerie sounds that made her heart race. There were moments when she felt completely alone, as if the world itself had turned against her. Yet even in these moments, she refused to give up. She reminded herself of her training, her lessons, and the strength she had cultivated over the years. Every small step forward, every new discovery in her journey, reinforced her belief that she could survive. Time became both an enemy and a teacher. Days blurred into nights and nights into days, but she learned to use this rhythm to her advantage. She established routines, checking her surroundings each morning, gathering resources during the day, and resting safely at night. She discovered that even small victories mattered. Each day she survived was proof that she could endure, that she could overcome even the harshest challenges. She took pride in these small accomplishments, allowing them to fuel her determination. During this time, she also became aware of her own resilience. Despite everything she had suffered, the injuries, the abandonment, the pain, she had not broken. Her mind remained clear, her instincts sharp and her spirit unyielding. She discovered a depth of strength she had never known, a power that came not from her physical abilities but from her courage, her intelligence, and her will to live. She began to see herself not as a victim of circumstance, but as a warrior still fighting her own battle in a different way. In the quiet moments, she sometimes talked to herself, giving herself advice, encouragement, or reminders of the lessons she had learned. She spoke of her ancestors, imagining their voices guiding her. She reminded herself of the values that had shaped her: courage, honor, resourcefulness, and compassion. These conversations, though silent to the world, were a source of strength. They reinforced her determination and reminded her that she was never truly alone. For the spirit of her people lived within her. Then one day, as she was navigating a particularly rocky stretch of the plains, she saw movement in the distance. At first she thought it might be another threat, another danger to contend with. But as the figure came closer, she realized it was a man, walking cautiously and observing the land. There was something different about him, not a sense of threat but of curiosity, of awareness, and of care. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she sensed hope. She did not know if he would help her, but simply seeing another human being sparked a flicker of possibility. The days that followed were filled with careful observation. She watched from a distance, unsure if approaching would be safe. Yet her instincts told her that this man might be her only chance at survival. He seemed cautious but kind, moving with awareness and patience. She remembered all the lessons her father had taught her about reading people, about sensing intentions through actions rather than words. Slowly she realized that he might be someone who could help her, someone who would not abandon her as her tribe had. Even as she contemplated this new possibility, she continued her efforts to survive. She knew she could not rely entirely on someone else, that her own strength and resourcefulness were still her greatest assets. She continued to find food, water, and shelter, always careful to remain safe and prepared. But now, alongside her determination to survive alone, there was a new motivation, the hope that she might be rescued, that she might find a companion who could see her worth and help her rebuild her life. Her journey was long and exhausting, but it was also a testament to the human spirit. She faced challenges that would have defeated many, yet she endured. Each day she survived reinforced her courage, her intelligence, and her resilience. She learned that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found, and that survival was not just about strength but about adaptability, patience, and determination. By the time the sun began to set one evening, painting the plains in brilliant shades of orange and red, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was not just surviving, she was preparing for the next stage of her life, whatever it might bring. She had faced abandonment, injury, and despair, yet she remained strong, determined, and unbroken. And somewhere in the distance, the figure of the man she had seen before moved closer, signaling that her story was about to take a new turn, one that would bring challenges, but also the possibility of compassion, trust, and a chance to rebuild what she had lost. In those quiet moments, as the wind brushed across her face and the plains stretched endlessly around her, she understood a simple truth: warriors endure, not because life is easy, but because they refuse to give up. Her legs might have failed her, her tribe might have abandoned her, and the world might have seemed cruel, but her spirit remained unshakable. She was a survivor, a warrior, and her journey was far from over. The man approached slowly, moving with a careful watchfulness that made it clear he was aware of the dangers of the wilderness. The Apache warrior woman lying on the ground observed him from a distance. Every instinct in her body was on alert. She had survived days alone, relying on her knowledge, strength, and cunning, and she would not trust anyone easily. Yet there was something in the way he moved, something in the kindness of his eyes that suggested he was not a threat. He carried himself with respect, and his voice, when he finally spoke, was calm and gentle, not demanding or commanding. At first, the interaction was cautious. She stayed where she was, her eyes following his every movement. He did not rush toward her, did not make sudden gestures. Instead, he knelt at a distance and spoke softly, reassuringly, introducing himself not as a savior, but as a fellow traveler who had noticed her struggle. His words carried no judgment, no pity, only concern. She listened, still wary, but a small part of her hoped that this man might be different, that he might actually help her. In the quiet of the wilderness, where trust had been a rare luxury, even a small gesture of kindness felt monumental. The cowboy offered simple, practical help. He brought food and water close enough for her to reach, showing patience and understanding as she slowly moved toward them. Her movements were awkward and painful, but the thought that someone was willing to wait, willing to give her time, gave her courage. For the first time in days, she felt the warmth of human compassion. It was not overwhelming or dramatic, it was quiet, steady, and reliable. It was enough to make her believe, even for a moment, that survival might not be her burden alone anymore. The days that followed were a delicate balance of trust and patience. The warrior woman was learning to rely on someone after having been abandoned, and the cowboy was learning how to support someone whose strength had always been defined by independence and resilience. He did not rush her recovery, nor did he treat her as helpless. Instead, he offered guidance, assistance, and encouragement, helping her discover that even with her injuries, she could regain mobility in new ways. Every small step, every minor achievement was celebrated, not as a pitying gesture, but as recognition of her courage and determination. One morning, after weeks of cautious interaction, the cowboy helped her to a makeshift sled he had crafted from branches and cloth. Together, they moved slowly across the plains. He allowed her to direct the pace, to decide when to rest and when to move forward. She realized that trust was not about losing control, but about finding someone who could support her without taking away her strength. For the first time, she felt that partnership was possible, that she did not have to face the world alone. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the scent of the grass and earth, and she felt alive again, not just surviving, but moving toward a new life. Their conversations were simple, but meaningful. She shared stories of her tribe, of her training, and of the challenges she had faced in the past. He listened, asking questions when appropriate, never interrupting or dismissing her experiences. Through these exchanges, a bond grew, not one of dependence, but one of mutual respect. She began to realize that strength could exist in many forms, and that the courage to survive alone could be complemented by the courage to accept help. Together, they became a team, each learning from the other, each finding ways to face the harshness of the world with shared resilience. During this time, she also learned about the cowboy. He spoke of his travels, his experiences in the wilderness, and the people he had met along the way. She noticed his respect for the land, his careful attention to the environment, and his ability to survive without fear. She realized that he was a man who valued life and understood the importance of compassion and integrity. Their bond grew stronger because it was built on understanding, not pity. She saw in him a reflection of the values she had always held dear: honor, patience, and a deep respect for living beings. As weeks turned into months, the warrior woman began to regain confidence in her mobility. With the cowboy's assistance, she learned to move with the sled, to use her arms to navigate and support her body, and to maintain her balance despite the absence of her legs. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories. The world, which had once seemed vast and insurmountable, became navigable. She discovered that while her body had changed, her spirit had not. She remained the same fierce, intelligent, and determined warrior she had always been. Their journey together also led to moments of quiet reflection. They would sit by the river at dusk, watching the sun dip below the horizon, sharing thoughts and stories without the pressure of survival. These moments were precious, a reminder that life was not only about hardship but also about connection and trust. She realized that she could still experience joy, still feel the warmth of friendship, and still hope for a future beyond pain and struggle. The cowboy's presence reminded her that even in the harshest circumstances, kindness and companionship could exist. One day, as they traveled through a particularly rugged stretch of land, they encountered a challenge neither had expected. A sudden storm rolled in, dark clouds covering the sky and strong winds sweeping across the plains. The warrior woman's makeshift sled was at risk, and she feared being swept away or injured further. But the cowboy remained calm, guiding her carefully, using his experience to keep them both safe. Together, they navigated the storm, relying on their skills, communication, and trust. By the time the clouds cleared, they had not only survived, but had strengthened their bond, proving to each other that even the fiercest challenges could be faced together. As their journey continued, she began to reflect on her tribe and the betrayal she had endured. She realized that while the pain of being left behind had been immense, it did not define her worth. The cowboy's unwavering support demonstrated that there were still people in the world who valued courage, determination, and integrity. She understood that healing was not only physical but emotional, and that accepting help was a form of strength, not weakness. Her trust in him was not blind. It was earned through patience, respect, and shared experiences. The warrior woman also began to dream again. She thought about the life she had once known and the possibilities that lay ahead. She imagined helping others, teaching those who might face similar struggles and proving that resilience and courage could overcome even the most difficult circumstances. The cowboy encouraged these thoughts, reminding her that her experiences, though painful, had also given her a unique perspective and a powerful story. Together they envisioned a future where survival, trust, and hope could coexist. Through it all, the cowboy never treated her as less than herself. He admired her strength, celebrated her victories, and respected her independence. He recognized that her identity as a warrior was not diminished by her injuries, but instead transformed by the challenges she had faced and the courage she had shown. His presence was not a crutch, but a partnership, allowing her to regain a sense of agency and purpose. She discovered that support and resilience could exist side by side, and that true strength often required both courage and trust. By the time they reached safer ground, far from the wilderness where she had been abandoned, the warrior woman had undergone a profound transformation. She was still the fierce, determined warrior of her tribe, but now she had also discovered a new depth of courage, one that came from enduring betrayal, surviving alone, and learning to trust again. She had found a companion who respected her, supported her, and shared her journey, proving that even the most painful experiences could lead to growth, connection, and hope. The bond they had formed was stronger than either had anticipated. It was built not on dependence or pity, but on mutual respect, shared struggle, and recognition of each other's courage. The warrior woman realized that she was not defined by her injuries, nor by the betrayal she had endured. She was defined by her spirit, her determination, and the choices she made each day to keep moving forward. And with the cowboy by her side, she knew that she could face any future challenge, confident in the knowledge that strength, courage, and kindness could coexist. In the quiet evenings, as they camped beneath the stars, she would often reflect on how far she had come, from the moment she was left behind in the wilderness, to the days of struggle and pain, to the gradual rebuilding of trust and strength. She had grown in ways she could never have imagined. The cowboy's presence was a reminder that life could offer hope, even after the deepest hardships. Together, they looked toward the future, not defined by past pain, but by the courage, resilience, and partnership that would guide them forward. Time passed, and the Apache warrior woman's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. With the cowboy by her side, she no longer faced the world alone. Her injuries remained, a permanent reminder of the battle and betrayal she had endured, but they no longer defined her. Each day she grew stronger, not just physically but emotionally. She learned to adapt to her new circumstances, finding ways to live independently while accepting the support that had once seemed impossible. She discovered that strength could be shared, and that trust could be rebuilt even after it had been shattered. The cowboy's presence was steady and reassuring. He helped her with the tasks that were now difficult, but he never did so in a way that diminished her spirit. She still made decisions for herself, still led when necessary, and still found moments of joy and pride in her accomplishments. Slowly, they began to travel together, moving from the wilderness toward settlements where she could receive better care and resources. Every step of the journey was a learning experience, teaching her to adapt, to trust, and to recognize her own resilience. She began to see that survival was not simply about enduring pain. It was about building a life, even in the aftermath of hardship. Along the way, she began to reflect on her past life with her tribe. The pain of being abandoned had been deep and lasting, but she understood now that it did not have to define her future. Her heart had room for forgiveness, if not for reconciliation. She realized that the values her tribe had taught her, courage, honor, and resilience, were still a part of her, and she could carry them forward in new ways. She understood that her story was not only about loss, but also about recovery, hope, and the strength that comes from enduring the unthinkable. As she regained more confidence in her mobility, She began to explore new ways to live her life. She learned to use special tools and techniques to move independently, to navigate her surroundings, and even to perform tasks she had once done with ease before her injuries. Each small victory was celebrated, not as a necessity but as a triumph of spirit and determination. The cowboy remained her constant companion, offering guidance, encouragement, and practical help, but always respecting her autonomy. Together, they discovered that life could be both challenging and joyful, and that companionship could bring both comfort and empowerment. Their journey was not only physical but emotional. She learned to trust again, to open her heart to another person after the betrayal she had endured. The cowboy's kindness and patience taught her that compassion was not weakness, but strength. In his presence, she discovered a sense of security she had not felt since childhood, a feeling that allowed her to heal in ways beyond the physical. She began to speak freely about her fears, her dreams, and her hopes, and she realized that sharing her story could be as powerful as living it. Along the way, she also began to think about how she could help others. Her experiences had taught her valuable lessons about courage, resilience, and the importance of support. She dreamed of sharing those lessons with young people who might face struggles of their own, teaching them that strength is not measured only by physical ability, but by determination, resourcefulness, and the courage to keep moving forward. The cowboy encouraged her to pursue this vision, reminding her that her experiences had given her a unique perspective and a powerful voice. Eventually, they reached a community that offered the resources and care she needed. Here, she could receive medical attention, learn adaptive techniques, and begin to rebuild her life in a more structured environment. She was nervous at first, unsure how others would respond to her injuries and her story, but she quickly discovered that people were not only compassionate, but also inspired by her courage. She became a symbol of resilience, someone who had endured unimaginable challenges and had emerged not broken but stronger. Her journey of survival and trust became a story that others could learn from, drawing hope and motivation from her example. In this new chapter of her life, she also reflected on the cowboy's role in her journey. Without his patience, guidance, and unwavering support, she might not have survived the wilderness or regained her confidence. Yet she realized that it was not just his help that mattered. It was the way he respected her strength, honored her independence, and treated her as a partner rather than a burden. Through this relationship, she discovered that true companionship is built on mutual respect, understanding, and the willingness to support one another without diminishing individuality. Over time, she began to teach others the skills she had once relied on as a warrior. She trained young people in observation, survival, and problem-solving, showing them how to adapt to challenges and persevere in the face of hardship. She also shared lessons in courage, patience, and emotional resilience, helping them understand that strength comes in many forms. Her story became more than a tale of survival. It became a source of inspiration, a living example of how adversity can be transformed into growth, hope, and empowerment. Despite everything she had endured, she found moments of joy and peace. She laughed again, felt excitement in learning new skills, and discovered the beauty of small victories in everyday life. She and the cowboy shared simple pleasures, walking through fields, sitting by a fire, watching the stars, and talking about the future. These moments, quiet and unassuming, were some of the most meaningful, reinforcing the lessons she had learned about trust, partnership, and resilience. She also reflected on forgiveness, not necessarily for those who had abandoned her, but for herself. She had once believed that her life was defined by what others had done to her, by the betrayal and the hardships she faced. But now she understood that her identity was her own, shaped not only by challenges, but by the courage with which she faced them. She allowed herself to release anger and bitterness, replacing them with acceptance, hope, and determination to live fully. This inner peace became a cornerstone of her strength, empowering her to embrace the future with confidence. In the end, her journey was about transformation, from a proud warrior of her tribe to an abandoned survivor, and finally to a woman who had reclaimed her strength and identity. She had grown in ways she could never have imagined. The cowboy had been a guide, a companion, and a friend, But the true transformation had come from within. She had discovered that resilience is not only about enduring pain, but also about embracing hope, accepting support, and using experiences to empower oneself and others. Her story became a beacon of hope for those who faced challenges of their own. People who heard about her journey were inspired by her courage, her determination, and her refusal to give up. She proved that even when life seems unfair, when betrayal and hardship strike, the human spirit can endure, adapt, and thrive. Her legacy was not only her survival, but the lessons she shared, the inspiration she offered, and the lives she touched with her story. As she looked back on her journey, she felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had faced unimaginable challenges, endured betrayal and pain, and yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She had discovered the power of trust, the importance of support, and the endless possibilities that come from resilience and courage. Her life was no longer defined by the hardships she had faced, but by the strength with which she had overcome them and the hope she offered to others. With the cowboy by her side, she embraced a new life filled with purpose, connection, and opportunity. She had learned that survival was not just about enduring the present, but about building a future, helping others, and finding joy and meaning in every moment. The lessons she had learned in the wilderness, the strength she had discovered within herself, and the trust she had rebuilt with another human being had all contributed to the woman she had become. A warrior, a survivor, a guide, and an inspiration. Her story ended not with despair but with hope. She had been abandoned, injured, and left to face the world alone, yet she had survived and thrived. She had discovered the power of resilience, the value of compassion, and the strength that comes from trust and partnership. And as she looked ahead to the days, months, and years to come, she knew that she would continue to live with courage, purpose, and the unwavering spirit of a true warrior.